Hello, and welcome back. This video is going to get into those moments where we may feel like we're not really connected in the moment, whatever situation that we're in. If we're with a loved one, if we are with our work, and we know we should be and we want to be connected, but we just can't really be in that moment. How do we fix that, and what do we do about it? Well, first, obviously, we have to understand the problem a little bit better. Our bodies, and specifically our minds, are always trying to seek a way to make us feel safe and trying to find a place of safety and getting away from danger. So if you look at it on a continuum where one end is very safe and then the other end is very dangerous to us, based on the severity of that, our brain is going to be trying to work harder to make us feel safe, whether it be physically escaping the environment or mentally and cognitively escaping the environment, and our mind's going to be wandering to certain things. So naturally, if you are genuinely in an objective, unsafe environment, you should act on that and move away from it. But sometimes our mind is going to be playing tricks on us in these situations where we know that we're not in danger and other people confirm for us that we're not in danger, but we can't seem to just relax and have fun with whatever people that are around us. And to better explain this, there's typically 5 cues that we always live in. We always live in at least one of these cues. When one of these cues doesn't satisfy our need in the moment anymore, we shift to another cue. And that is the safety cue, where we realize there is nothing dangerous around us and we can engage in social activities and our mind can be free and curious to learn new ideas and new things. The novelty cue, where there's something new in our environment and we're not sure if it's going to be a danger to us or safe to us. So we're kind of waiting to see and assess if it's something that we need to be worried about. Then there's the threatening cue, and this is the traditional fight-flight response, and this is where we're trying to seek safety, whether it is in our mind or physically escaping the environment. Then there's the reward cue, where we tend to just have tons of energy. We not only feel safe, but we're overjoyed of that safety, and we're really engaging with it in kind of this amped up energy mentality. And then there's the overwhelming cue, where we literally shut down because we feel like there's nothing to do. We're almost in this learned helplessness state, and we just kind of give in to whatever's around us. And so we always want to try to move to that safety cue. So how do we kind of engage that safety cue if we find ourselves in that threatening cue or even the overwhelming cue? Well, once we realize that in those moments that we want to enjoy the moment in and we want to engage in, we are actively moving away from it because our body thinks that it's unsafe, to something that makes us feel safe, then the first step is to really stop going to those things that are making us feel safe, whether it be mentally or behaviorally. And just to clarify, just because you go to those things mentally to make yourself feel safe in those moments doesn't mean that you're a bad person or you purposefully trained yourself to do this because you actively don't want to be in those moments. It's just simply something that happened to you as you grew up. You unconsciously learned for some reason in those moments was unsafe for you. Now, that also doesn't mean that we can't do anything about it. We can simply learn new behaviors in the moments and actively train ourselves to still relax and be in the moment once we learn subconsciously, specifically, that it's not dangerous for us. So I know for me specifically, I have tons of moments where I know that I want to enjoy the moment in, but it's difficult for me to, and I find myself disengaging just because I've learned in the past that for some reason or another it was unsafe for me. So these are things that I personally need to relearn. So what I do is I take my journal and I write down, after thinking about it, what are the things that my mind goes to? What do I think about? What are the behaviors that I want to do? Is it that I want to text someone? Is it that I'm waiting for someone to text me? Is it that I want to eat some really good food to make my mind think about something else? Do I want to isolate myself in my own room? And then once you identify what all those behaviors are, then you actively want to try to avoid those behaviors. And this is going to be really uncomfortable for you because you're so used to going to these behaviors to make yourself feel good. This is something called an exposure and response prevention, where you literally want to refrain from those responses that prevent you from habituating to that environment. And by engaging in that environment and not doing those responses long enough, your body is going to naturally habituate to the moment, and you're going to relax, you're going to unconsciously realize it's a safe environment, and you're going to enter that safety cue and learn to enjoy the moment socially again. And we have a lot of evidence to show that this is very true, not only in exposure therapy, which is where ERP comes from, but even in the world of crisis intervention. We know that people who are entering a crisis in their life, it tends to really only last for about 4 to 6 weeks, just because your body literally can't stay in that heightened state. Over time, you're going to eventually find the other things for you to go to in that moment. It's just a matter of once you get to that end of the 4 to 6 weeks, when your body naturally habituates to it, where it learns that the environment is a danger or learns that the environment is actually safe. So this is also highlighting a point that this takes a little bit of time to work on. You can't just naturally expect yourself to come over this in about 2 to 3 days. Every person is different depending on the severity of how unsafe you feel that environment is, but it takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of practice to not only recognize all of the unhealthy responses that you go to, but working on not engaging in those responses and seeing what happens. So as an example, let's say that you are studying for school. You're in college, you're trying to earn a degree, but you realize that studying, you get distracted easily. You go to your phone, you go on the internet, you always get up, walk away, you find an excuse to not study. According to this idea, the reason that you constantly are finding these excuses to not study or go into your phone is simply because you've just learned that studying is a threat to you, and something has happened in the past where you've learned and had evidence to show that studying is bad. So we want to subconsciously habituate ourselves to studying by not only recognizing all of those responses that we go to, the phone, the internet, the eating the food, going to the kitchen, and then actively not engaging with those while we are studying. And we are going to get uncomfortable. It's going to be a very uncomfortable experience for us in the moment. But we want to engage in this for as long as we can, even if it takes up to 30 minutes to an hour in a study session of just reviewing the notes and trying to process the information, but really, again, just sitting there with the textbook. And that brings up another great idea. Sometimes the exposures that we want to eventually get to, such as studying for a long period of time or being with, friends and enjoying the moment, we have to actively work ourselves up that way. For instance, if we're trying to expose ourselves to studying and habituate to the studying process, we may just want to start with the book in front of us and just the textbook wide open and just staring at the page for, literally 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and seeing what happens to our body. Our body is going to naturally go to the phone or naturally go to the internet, and we want to withhold from doing that. And then by exposing ourselves long enough and not responding in the activities that we don't want to do, we are going to enter that safety queue much easier, and those feelings of enjoyment are going to come much more naturally to us because our mind is going to start gravitating to the things that we want to engage with. And our mind's not going to gravitate to the things that just want to make us feel safe, because those behaviors ultimately are hindering us from the kind of life that we want. Which brings up the final point on this. We ultimately have to realize that the pattern that we're in, the urge that we have to realize that we're kind of powerless over it. If we are trying to force ourselves to enjoy the moment, force ourselves to study, we're really fighting against that threat. And the more we fight against that threat, the tougher it is to really engage with it. The more uncomfortable we get, and the more our brain fights to go into that activity that we don't want to engage in. And to clarify, it's not that we're powerless to going to our phone. It's that we're powerless for the urge. And we try to figure out what is that urge going to fulfill for us. For instance, if we are going to our phone and we want to stop going to our phone when we're studying, what is it about going to the phone that we want? It's not that our urge to text people. It's our urge for connection, really. It's our urge for social engagement. It's our urge for fear of missing out. That urge is in us, and it was biologically learned based on something that happened to us in the past. And that behavior pattern, that neural network is still going to be there, but it's up to us to realize that there's another neural pattern that we can develop and learn, and that is the activity of engaging in, the thing that we want to engage in. So that's it. That's my video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.